is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position,
stand your ground,
and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Jake for the State podcast. Today, we are continuing the interviews with the candidates who are in the runoff for this Republican primary. And one of those is with me today, Senator Dana Prieto. Senator, welcome.
Hey, Jake, good to be here and be with the conservatives, my people.
Well, my first question is, have you been hydrating during this 100-degree heat spell as you're out knocking doors? It is relentless. How is that impacting your door knocking?
Well, yeah, I only go for about 2.5 hours a day myself, but I go 6 days a week. And we kind of reached the saturation point now. People are saying, please don't come back to our door. You've been here 4 times.
And my heart goes out to all of the candidates knocking doors and working so hard. So we want to make sure to help and support the good conservatives like you, because you have a proven track record as a conservative in the Oklahoma Senate. And we want to make sure that you stay in there along with the others that are fighting for the conservative values. I think that we are maybe near, I don't know, what are the numbers right now as far as those that are, we would consider true conservatives. It's a hard conversation sometimes to have because there's not complete alignment on all issues, as we all know. But right. I consider you to be one of those true conservatives. Of course, the Freedom Caucus recently came to Oklahoma and got established. So, solid conservatives there. But what does that dynamic look like right now in the Senate?
Well, it's interesting because I've been in there almost 4 years now. So I voted for 2 pro tems, and both times we lost getting the good conservative pro tem by 1 vote.
Right.
And so it's still about the same. It's split just about down the middle. And maybe 1 or 2 more on the what I like to term the cabal on the the other side from the conservatives. Of course, everybody says they're conservative. Everybody campaigns and says they're conservative. That's what people said. Well, some of the other newscasters were asking me, aren't you afraid that people you're going to get out like Dusty Devers, that they don't want the conservative? And I said, that's not true. I said the people who ran against Dusty, at least one of them had on their campaign, on their Facebook page, they laid out their plan, and I said, that's Dusty's plan. I said, that's what he's doing. Right. I said, I don't understand why you're even bothering to run. Right. Telling people you're going to do this. And so people are campaigning on what the Freedom Caucus does. But the difference is that once we get up there, we truly want to continue to do what we told people we were going to do, because we realize we work for the people. And what happens is it's called group drift. And you've been there. The lobbyist, you have breakfast with a lobbyist, you have lunch with a lobbyist, you have dinner with a lobbyist. Your friends that you talk to, your other senators that you talk to all day are talking to you about what the lobbyist bills are running for the lobbyist. And so you end up, it's called group drift, and you end up being not what you said you were going to be. And it happened to me the first year to almost 1.5 years. And I have to say, the pro tem at that time, I thought, did a very good job on selling us on why we had to be a yes or a no on some of these bills. But it took me a little over 1 year, and I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It seems like everything that we are supposed to be a yes on has some money attached to it from a lobbyist someplace. And so that's what, it's always the old adage, follow the money.
That's it. And that was, of course, at the heart of my campaign in the gubernatorial race of just refusing all money. It was a more extreme measure, but to remove all doubt and all questions about, where you're aligned and things like that. But the money does talk. You follow the money, and you can find out who's being steered different directions. So, with your particular campaign, what does that look like? What kind of lines have you drawn around money, the whole money issue?
I'll take lobbyist money all day long if they want to give it to me. The problem is they don't want to give it to me. Because now I have had some lobbyists, and they tend to be, right-leaning lobbyists, who have given me money. It might be $3,000 or $4,000 or something out of about the 40,000 we raised. But what's interesting is some of the people who are on the other side, um, they're getting $200,000 to $400,000 in their campaign accounts from lobbyists. And then there's also dark money coming from lobbyists from other states and um, from lobbyists within PACs and things like that that are also doing the campaigning for them.
Yeah.
So that we're talking about sometimes $600,000 being spent on these candidates, and so somebody who's coming in who's new, and they raise. I remember the first time I ran, I think I raised 17,000 or something. It's not even you can't compete.
Right. I mean, you have these dark money groups that you mentioned that come in, and just to remind people about how this works, these are typically 501c4 organizations. The condition is that they cannot work directly with candidates. And so they're
Right.
supposed to work independently, either for or against someone. And they usually do this by funding mailers or TV ads or radio ads. And you listen to the short disclaimer at the end, and it'll tell you very quickly who it's put out by. And if you look that up, then you usually can't find them. That's why we call them dark. They're these mysterious, nefarious. I would call them nefarious. If you're going to remain mysterious in our election, I assume you're going to be nefarious. And people are sick of this dark, shadowy influence on Oklahoma elections. And I'm just curious, in your particular race, what have you seen in that dark money influence?
Oh gosh, we're getting. I think in the primary we probably had about 10 mailers. Um, some of the dark money, because I always look at who it's coming from,
Right.
and the some of the same PACs that were sending out negative mailers about me were sending out positive mailers about the other three people who were running against me. Then in the runoff now, we've had, oh gosh, 11 or more negative mailers come in. One day they sent out a thing. I gave 275 million to Muslims, and it's got me standing with Muslims. They've got me pictures with Obama. And then the 2 days later, they sent out, I gave 225 million to Muslims. And I'm like, what happened to the other 50 million?
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you're going to make up stories, you got to keep it straight.
Right.
You got to remember. But we have had so one of the PACs that was sending out those negative mailers came to my front door delivering stuff for my opponent. So they were also working for my opponent. But I on the other hand, we got the other day I got three negative mailers against me. And like I said, it's crazy, crazy things. Me with Obama and things like that. Nancy Pelosi, me and her in pictures together. And then I got two 8 by 8.5 by 11 full postcards in my favor from a group called it's like Citizens Against Communism. And I haven't had no contact with them, and we actually found flyers and ran into them they were going to the doors for me,
Right.
And we have no idea who these people are. And it's funny because sometimes some senators are saying, "Hey, you're going to vote yes on my bills today?" And I said, "Well, I was looking at them. I said the bills are okay today. They're not like your usual communist bills, so I'm going to be a yes on those ones today." And it's funny because now these people, I've never heard of this group. It's called like Citizens Against Communism.
Wow. You know, I don't think that we're going to be able to shut that out, the dark money.
Right.
But what I do encourage people to do is meet the candidates. You just can't replace the face-to-face interview with the candidates. So the more people can go to the event you're speaking at, that you're going to be present at, and engage you face to face, I think the better they can gauge who the best candidate is, rather than depending on these mailers and these dark money ads. And so just have to encourage people there. Your opponent was recently endorsed, I believe, by the pro tem of the Senate and some others in leadership. I'm just curious, then what does that say about where leadership aligns and then where your opponent aligns? I'm here at Modus Health in Yukon, Oklahoma, here with Dr. Jeremy Moss. Dr. Moss, tell the people what all you guys do here at Modus Health.
So we are a full-service natural health care clinic, chiropractic, acupuncture, functional medicine, nutrition, massage, really anything from a natural, holistic, vitalistic perspective. That's what we do, and so we exist to serve for.
Yukon, Oklahoma, Dr. Jeremy Moss and his team, I know they can help you out. How do they get in touch with you?
Easiest way is just give us a call. So 405-494-0165. You'll call our front desk. We'll get you squared away as soon as we can. Typically, we can work patients in, sometimes even same day, but for sure within the same week, we'll get you in and get you feeling better soon.
Your opponent was recently endorsed, I believe, by the pro tem of the Senate and some others in leadership. I'm just curious, then what does that say about where leadership aligns and then where your opponent aligns?
Well, very interesting because my opponent ran as a Democrat. It was like, I forgot what year it was. He ran as a Democrat a number of years ago. He described himself as a middle of the road person and just switched. I thought it was last year. I've heard it could have been 2 years ago that he switched over to Republican, I think, to run against me. But what does that, I guess the big question is, what does that say about where like I said, the Senate is split in half. You've got the strong conservatives on one side. You've got the middle of the road people on the other side that are all, and it's always about the money. And so I guess that's the big question. Why, and these people all campaign saying that they're going to be conservative. They're going to be the greatest conservative ever to run. One of the people, I happen to know him, and he doesn't like Trump. He put out like 7 mailers about how much he likes Trump. Him and Trump are just best buddies.
Oh, I'm sure they do go way back. Well, let's drill down on some issues that you've been contending for and working on while you're in the Senate. And I know one of those that's important to me is also important to you, and that's in the area of DHS reform.
Yes.
So let's drill down into that. I mean, what were you in the last 3 years? What have you been able to work on? Have you seen any progress? What's your hope for the future concerning DHS?
My hope for the future is that we will get a real conservative in as the pro tem, someone who cares about the people of Oklahoma and not the lobbyists, and that we'll actually be able to make changes. I have had, I think, somewhere around 15 bills that I've written that have never, ever been heard about DHS. And one of them came from a judge. And it was about the evidentiary. In other words, when they take a kid away from a parent, right, it's the lowest form of evidence. It can be hearsay.
Right. The preponderance of evidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so my bill said it had to be the highest form which is I forgot the legal term.
The clear and
But
convincing proof.
clear and convincing proof. Very
Right.
good. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Clear and convincing proof that, in other words, that you have to have clear and convincing proof something has happened.
Yes.
That to take not just hearsay. And that came to me from a judge who just said they're making all kinds of mistakes because of this, and kids are getting taken away, and so they've never heard those kind of bills. I had a bill to just say you couldn't report anonymously,
Right.
and I had a meeting with the current people, the head of DHS. The liaison said, "Oh, you can't report anonymously. That we won't let anybody report anonymously." So I came home, went to the website, took a screenshot of click here if you want to report anonymously.
Right.
And so I took that screenshot, sent it up to the head of DHS, and I said, "Look, I never want that liaison in the meeting with you and me again." I said, "She's running. I said, you ask any alcoholic, what's in other words, to get better, you have to admit you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Otherwise, oh no, I went through AA. I don't drink too much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if
Yeah.
you live in denial, you're never going to get anywhere. And let's start with the baseline of honesty. And so, yeah, let's examine the facts. Of course, they work for DHS. They should know their policies. Clearly, you can report anonymously, but clearly you should also have the right to face your accuser. And so I totally agree with that. I think we need to protect that information, but not allow it to be anonymous.
Yes. Oh, yes. And it should be protected. And then only if a judge allows it to be because it's needed in the trial.
Right. Right. But that way, if someone is simply throwing out accusations that could impact a family, there could be repercussions for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with both of those bills. Very much needed in DHS. Were there any reasons given as to why they were not heard?
No reason at all, other than I have no clue why.
Yeah.
They just don't want to hear them. I asked for an interim study in DHS. They said they don't do interim studies. The head of that of HHS said they don't do interim studies.
Well, that could be part of the problem there. And
yeah,
I'm in favor of some new leadership there in that department, in that committee. We have to have someone who's interested in reform. And it seems like we are kicking the can down the road, just perpetuating the same broken system, giving excuses along the way as to why we can't change it. And so, yes, we need your voice in there, continuing to contend for the children and for the families. Absolutely.
Well, now, when when I first actually heard about the Woolley case, my wife had been praying about that for years. She's older, this family, this has happened to them. And I just think like, okay, whatever, and then I saw the film, met the Woolleys, and I said I wanted to talk to the head of DHS at that time. And it was a Democrat senator who told me, be careful, they're going to start circling the wagons. And within a half an hour of having a meeting with the head of DHS, who was the head of DHS at that time, I'm on the Senate floor, and the head of HHS comes over and says, drop this and leave it alone. I said, not going to happen. And he said, well, have it your way then.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that meant. I guess it meant they're never going to hear any of my bills.
I think they're closely connected.
Yes.
And
you have to obey.
How interesting is it that now, I celebrate this, but it seems like DHS is now shifting and looking at reunification with the mom.
Yes.
Clayton is no longer with the foster mom, who was then identified as an abuser herself.
Yeah.
He's in a family home now, looking at possible reunification with the mom. And it seems like they just want to move on and possibly reunify and just dismiss everything that came before. I'm all for the reunification, but we got to come back and look at the mistakes made to ensure that that never happens again.
Right. Yeah. And that's, and it's the same thing is happening through all agencies. Um, I'm on select agencies committee.
Yeah.
And what happens is now we passed the Rains Act, um, but we have to look. We have, you would not believe the paperwork you have to look through now. So what was happening before the Rains Act was an agency could literally write their own check and just say we need to raise our money, we need to raise our salary. Some of these agencies have two or three people working in them, and they found out, oh, well, the person in Arkansas is getting $75,000 a year more than I am.
Right.
And so they put in and say, hey, I want 75,000 more. And if you're not watching, it would just come through as blank things for agencies, the agency request, and they would come through like 100 of them at a time, and you'd sign and we'd vote yes on them or whatever. Well, now with the Rains Act, each one of them has to be taken, and some of them are they're like 100 pages long. You have to read through,
I,
and I've told the senator that it's over that. I said, I think this is what it's like if you get sentenced to hell. They give you a stack of these agency things to read through, and then when you think you're finished, they say, "Oh no!" and they open a door, and there's like rooms full of them.
oh, yeah. Great incentive to reduce the size of government right there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, the
They're
Rains
working
Act,
on
I
an
think, is
AI
great.
program actually to go through all of that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is. Have you utilized that yourself, and have you seen any strengths or weaknesses if you have using
Say that
AI?
again.
Using AI to help process bills and examine
I
them?
did. I actually for that I did use AI to go through
Yeah.
some of those bills, but the program that the state was working on was only using so it's not going out to the internet to research. Only research is within our state because of following our state laws,
Right.
and so
Right.
they haven't quite finished that yet. But it's going to greatly help us with that select agencies.
Yeah. No, and I know there are some independent groups out there that are also putting together some really good programs to analyze bills and identify those that are true conservative, freedom-loving bills and those that are problematic. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good tools I think that we're going to have at our disposal to make sure that we can keep a better eye on the legislature and that good conservative bills can get through.
Yeah, and
Um,
I caught something this year. It was the state school, superintendent after Ryan had left,
yeah.
what they wanted to change, and it went through. What they wanted to change, and I just happened to catch this. It was they wanted to change. So remember what if a teacher had done something egregious,
Mhm.
Ryan would pull their like they put on there. We think we ought to kill people or something like that. While he would say, "Well, you can't teach kids in this state. That's not good," and he'd take their license.
Right.
Well, what the proposed law, the proposed rule came through, and it said that you cannot take the license until after they have gone through to a policeman has arrested them, they've been tried and convicted.
Okay.
So you can see that that's a quite a high, and in some small towns and things, it's never ever going to go to trial. Um, and so it's anyhow, and it there was some technicality. I caught it, and both the head of select agencies on the Senate side and on the House side said, "You're absolutely correct. This is terrible, but we have to let it go through because of I forgot their reasoning." And they said, "You're going to have to write a bill to fix that."
Oh,
And of
wow.
course, the problem is now trying to get the bill heard.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was the whole purpose of the Rains Act was being able to stop these things.
Wow.
And
Wow.
through some technicality that made it through.
Well, we have lots of work obviously to do in that area of education, and
Yeah.
having gone across the state this last year, that was the consistent concern: is how do we improve education?
Yeah.
um, I'm curious not only about that subject, but what other subjects have been brought up in your community, in your district, that are concerning to your constituents?
I think that as we're at the doors, two things that are coming up most are the smelter plant and data centers.
Yes.
And
What's the primary concern you're hearing from them with either one of those?
well, both of them is, environment. They're concerned, and originally, I've got this on my website, but originally I was for data centers, and I was working with John, the guy who was over the state commerce, and the plan was for them to be all around the outskirts of the state, way out in the middle of nowhere. And his feeling was that it would draw employees from out of, if you have them on the state borders, it would bring employees from out of state to work, and they would begin paying taxes in Oklahoma, possibly even move to Oklahoma to some of these rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the plan. And when President Trump talked about Oklahoma needs to put data centers in, he was talking about what's called behind the meter. So it's a behind the meter solution for the energy. And that's what originally got me to look at this. Oklahoma has tons of natural gas.
Yeah.
So you turn natural gas, it turns a turbine, and it turns it into electricity. And the cost is it's slightly higher than if you buy it. But at any rate, that was the plan, was to go around the outskirts of the state into these, and so that would bring ad valorem taxes to places that are dying, and it would be far enough away from anybody's houses and everything. And that was the plan. And now they've got 60 of them proposed in green country alone. And so it's like, and none of it's behind the meter. Uh, Representative Clay Stairs and I had a bill that we had authored together that was never heard. They took another one, and it's always the watered down version. And then you got to vote yes on it because it's better than nothing. But Clay Stairs and I had a bill that it was best practices in data centers. If you're going to build a data center and you need infrastructure, you pay for it. You can't if you can't raise electricity costs because of your data center, and you have to be far enough back from all property lines. And then I had also added in that the behind the meter solution had to be had to have a serious look at that, why you weren't using behind the meter solution.
Right. No, I think all those are the top concerns that I've been hearing. 3 miles from my house, there's a new one proposed down in by Amber. And so, over 500 acres sold for around $17 million, and, a new data center proposed there. So the people in my community are very up in arms and concerned, about possible water contamination, water loss, electricity concerns, all of the above. And then, something that doesn't get a lot of attention is just the loss of the way of life. The reason we live out here in the country is because we like the country. And it feels like the industries are being forced down our throat, that we're forced to just deal with it. And whether it's solar industrial complexes, I don't like to call them solar farms, solar industrial complexes coming to our farms, or data centers, or now the smelter plant. And, I've come out in support of Mike Mazzei for governor, but I do have the caveat is I'm not for the smelter plant. I align with him on enough other solutions. I feel like he's the best candidate, but I'm still not on board with the smelter plant. I think we still have way too many concerns. Those must be addressed before we move forward.
We all voted yes on that aluminum plant, and the jury's out whether it's actually a smelter plant or not. I've heard that it's not a smelter plant, that it's just an aluminum processing plant, not smelter, but I don't know. But when we looked at it, first off, we thought it had to do with national security, and I still think that it does, and that's why we all voted yes on it. I didn't like the giving the money to them at all, but when it was national security, and so we just decided to vote yes on it. But then I decided to I was going to do a resolution that they and I put in for a resolution, and of course they didn't hear it. But the
Mhm.
resolution was that until this meets certain requirements, they can't build it.
Yeah.
But what I've actually heard is that the EPA is, in other words, it's never going to be built until the EPA says signs off on it and says yes, this has met all the requirements. And I don't think they've even bought the property. They're waiting on the um, EPA. But this is the interesting thing. It was Representative Gann. So when we first looked at it, I thought it was 5 miles from everything. It's only, he said, it's less than a mile from his neighborhood.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, well, that's interesting because that's not, when we looked at it, I thought, unless I was looking at the map wrong, it appeared to be 5 miles from everything.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, and I know, he's been opposed, Representative Gann has been, to the data centers. And of course, right there, where Google is, and all of in that prior Inola area. And so kind of been fighting this fight for a while
Yeah.
concerning tax subsidies and, um, you know, intrusion on the farmland and ranch land and things like that. But this one seems to bring a whole new concern with the contamination of fluoride. And, of course, historically very toxic. Of course,
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
new plants, of course, are saying better processes, less toxic, but people in the community saying, hey, less toxic is still toxic and too much toxic for us. So, it seems almost unanimous from the people I've talked to that the people in the area are completely opposed to it. And I have to say, if I was in the area, I probably would be completely opposed to it as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. So when we talked to them, they came in and talked to us. They had a meeting with the Senate, the people who were building this, and we asked a ton of questions, and we felt like we got good answers about how clean it was and everything. But when it's not next to my house.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so if it was next to my house, and this is where, it's one of the things I put on my website about the data centers. It's the same thing. Is that philosophically, I like the idea of data centers. I said, but I don't want them next to my house either.
right,
And so
right,
my job is not to push through what I think is a good idea. It's to listen to the people.
yeah,
We're up there representing the people, and the people do not want a data center next to them.
right.
And so we live on a little green belt, and there's a creek between us and the rest of the neighborhood on the other side. Well, if somebody wanted to said we're going to tear down all those houses and build a data center over there, I might be even though I thought, hey, these data centers, I think they're a good idea,
They're a good
and all of
idea
a
in
sudden
your
be,
neighborhood.
whoa, wait a minute, I'm not sure I love this idea
Yeah,
anymore.
right, right. I know it has become, I think, the hot topic of
Yeah.
today. I mean, and even I think replacing, maybe surpassing education as the most talked about issue right now.
Yes.
Although education is there very important. Of course, we have the superintendent race that it'll be very consequential here in Oklahoma. But what else? When I'm thinking about the dark money influence with your race in particular, what are some of the accusations that they're throwing out about you?
Uh, let's see. One of the ones was I got 4% of my bills through, um, and and I thought that's an indictment on the leadership, not the not me.
Right.
A lot of bills got through committee, and they just simply did not hear them. Um, one of the senators on the not so conservative side uh, made a statement one time. He said, "You guys just care about social issues. We're doing the real business of the state." And well, what's the real business of the state? Well, getting businesses to move here. And look, I want businesses to move here. I'm actually working with the town of Sperry on getting businesses to move here. Working on one from this, they're down in Houston now, trying to get them up here. So I want businesses to move here. I get that, but not at in other words, we're using taxpayer money
Mm-hmm.
to it's corporate welfare.
Yeah.
And by the way, some of these, well, I won't get into that. I don't think some of these attack ads. came from a company that the conservatives all voted no on them getting a tax cut.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes
Yeah, and
sense.
this company spent 700 or 800 million
Wow.
giving to lobbyists giving to legislators in the Oklahoma, and of course, then they're voting yes on the bills. You know,
Mm. Well, speaking of tax cuts, this is also pretty central to, I think, a lot of races right now. The issue of ad valorem tax, property tax, and of course, ending state income tax. And of course, the Senate, I guess the House and the Senate, the legislature made a 0.25% cut with Governor Stitt really leading the way there. But in the end, I mean, he was looking to end it. We got a 0.25% cut with a plan, if all goes well, to eventually end income tax in the state. Very tight conditions there around that. But how often is this coming up in your engagement with your district, the issue of tax reform, property taxes, state income tax?
not as much at the doors, but I have heard from other citizens around the state, of course. And I the plan that we have now for cutting the income tax will take about 15 years to get to zero. And I'm okay with that. You know, it would be great if it was 10 years. By the way, tax revenue has gone up since they made those cuts.
Here you go.
So
Yeah.
trickle down economics is working. Um, so what the income tax is based on GDP. As that goes up, every time it goes up, it triggers another cut.
Yeah.
So what we have to work on is the GDP getting, that's getting businesses here, getting businesses prosperous. And Mike Mazie had a plan. Remember when the state wanted to give 700 million to it was Panasonic Battery Company.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
I
probably
voted
was when
against
you
it.
were in there.
Yeah. I voted against all of that. Yep.
Yeah. So Mike Mazie at that time he wasn't even running for governor, didn't no thought of running for governor, but he had a plan, and I'm not sure I agree with this plan either because it's still our tax dollars that they're taking and doing this with. But he had a plan to he said if you took so it was 700 million. If you got 700 businesses, multi-million dollar businesses, still small but considered small businesses in Oklahoma,
Uh-huh.
who could hire one person and worth $1 million, they could grow their business to the point to hire one person. The return on the investment was 7 years. The return on the investment for that Panasonic company was 47 years.
Mm. Wow.
So, and I'm still not in favor of doing that because we're just changing who we're giving the money to.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but but anyhow, I just thought that was an interesting plan that he had.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, like you just mentioned, even with the small tax reform we had on state income tax, the tax revenue received by the state has gone up. You
Yeah.
let people keep more of their money, they're going to spend it, and we're going to have more tax revenue there. So, let's keep the money in the people's pocket. It works. So
Yeah, and for ad valorem tax, I liked Senator Bullard's plan, which was senior citizens ends now.
Yeah.
They don't have any kids in school. And the problem with senior citizens is that they have bought their house in, not always, but in many cases, they bought their house 30 years ago. Let's say 30 years ago, the house was 75,000. They're now retired. They have a house that's worth 275 to 375,000.
Right.
And they're paying taxes on that. I remember my mother telling me that the taxes that they were paying, their house was paid off, and the taxes that they were paying was now way higher than their mortgage payment ever
I don't
was.
doubt it. And God forbid they make any improvements on their land.
Yeah.
I mean, now you don't want to even touch your land, afraid that it's going to, triple your taxes. So,
Yeah.
we have to move. I want to move towards ending it. I think it's possible, but I think starting with ending it for seniors. Absolutely. Let's start there.
Yeah, and so that was Bullard's plan, is to end it for seniors and then give the counties and the cities time that, in other words, a plan just like just a stair stepping down,
Yeah.
like the income tax, and give them. And so a more fair, or more philosophically fair tax is a consumption tax. And then so, like, maybe, I don't know if carpet cleaning is taxed now, so they would start taxing services and things like that.
Um,
Um, and then cities will start fighting over, well, hey, come to our city, our carpet cleaning is not taxed, or hire a person from our city. And so it's going to be an interesting dynamic. I
it
think
is.
that's going to happen. But anyhow, that's a more fair tax, is a consumption tax.
Yeah. What are the clear distinctions between you and your opponent right now, as we're just a few days away now from the runoff election?
I think the biggest thing is I've always been a Republican, conservative. It was funny. One of the things that he tells people is he's from New York, and they're like, "What, from New York? Oh no!" Well, I think I figured out he was 8 years old when I moved here. As
Right.
a as a conservative, and so happy to move here from New York, because it's like, wow, we have Republicans here. And so
Exactly.
I moved
Exactly.
here as a Republican and as a conservative.
You're
And
GOP
so
certified, right?
I'm GOP certified, yes.
Okay.
He was rejected for certification. And there's the GOP started this thing where they certify you or reject you for certification. And it's based on 5 things. And we don't know the reason why he was rejected, but it was either one or more of the 5 things that they set up. You had to agree with 80% of the
Yeah.
Republican, their it's not doctrine, but you know what I'm saying.
The principle is right. Yeah.
Prince, yeah,
I like it. I was GOP certified. I think it's a great vetting process. If people are going to
yes,
have an R by their name, that needs to mean something. And so I think it's a step in that direction. So that is I think, a significant distinction between you and your opponent. Also, I think that you were endorsed by OK2A. Is that correct?
yes.
Another leading conservative organization in the state. Of course, Don Spencer making news lately by being the first in Oklahoma to buy his suppressor when they became legal again on the market. So we love that. But good conservative group in the state behind you as well. What else, speaking to your voters, speaking to your district right now, I'm going to let you talk to them about why you over your opponent.
I've been a proven as conservative. So I've voted conservative. I say, other than my first year when I bought the lies.
Well, I think that's good. I think that's good for you to admit that. And, you even recognizing, I understand the same thing. I mean, there were some things that it's a very interesting process going through it as an elected official, of the circles that you get caught up in and the swirl. And sometimes it takes a couple of years to really adjust and figure out what's going on and who's out there to influence you for different reasons. And so, I think it's great that you can recognize that and then publicly admit that. I think that speaks to your character myself.
No, thanks. Yeah, I guess the biggest difference is I'm proven. The other guy was a Democrat and has switched to a Republican. We were just speaking at the same place. He said he doesn't remember when he switched. It was either in the last year or the last 2 years that he switched over to, which I think presumably was to run against me.
Well, the record, I think, is significant. And, I know, having known you for a few years now, you've been relentless, fighting for families, fighting for children, especially in this area of child welfare, for tax reform, standing with the Freedom Caucus in the Senate, being a voice for conservative values. So, I fully support and endorse you, Senator Prieto. And I hope the people in your district, especially the conservatives there, will see through the lies and the noise and really get behind you one more time. Now, the question is, you know, are you prepared to term out and delay your investment in new coon dogs and fishing poles? How long are you prepared to stay in here and fight for the conservatives in Oklahoma?
I will stay the 12 years if I have to. David McLean came to my office and he said, "We got to get you." David McLean was the former head of the state for the
GOP
Republicans,
chair.
and he said, "We've got." He said, "You've got to run for office again. We got to get you elected." I said, "David, I want to get coon dogs. We tried to buy 4 or 5 houses up here. It didn't work." I said, they'll let my wife bring her Yorkies up. They don't want a couple of 100-pound coon dogs in their house that we're renting, for the 4
Yeah.
months we're up there. So I said that everything fell through. 4 or 5 houses we tried to buy, and I said, I don't want to wait till I'm 79 to get coon dogs. And he said, "You can get your coon dogs in heaven." He said, "You're staying till you're 79." I said, "Well, thanks, Dave, thanks for all the compassion."
Right. Yeah. Well, and it just speaks to how vital this is. And like you mentioned before, we're right there. There was one vote separating the conservative pro tem from the more establishment group there. And so that's significant. I think that we have a real chance to change leadership in the Senate, and that could be very significant for the state.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Well, hey, Senator, I really appreciate your time. We're going to get that out there. Again, I fully support and endorse you. I hope the people in your district will as well. God bless you in this. And how can people find out more about you and your campaign? Do you have a website?
Yeah, go to oksenate34.com.
Okay, Senate34.com. All right, go check him out, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. And be sure, of course, to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Talk to you later.
All right, we'll see you.